Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a new Elden Ring Things You Didn't Know episode. Today we're going to take a look at a lot of community posts and things going on currently in this week of Elden Ring, and one of the main things I want to look at just to start us off is one from Bandai themselves. I'm talking about this post that happened over this week from the Elden Ring Battle Scars infographic. Yes, with this post from Malenia, we are celebrating the 1-year anniversary officially of Elden Ring. To celebrate, they've released this infographic to do with boss attempts, the causes of deaths, who and what is actually playing online. First up, we have this fun one, the top 5 boss attempts. So in the year since launch, we have seen just shy 6 billion attempts at a boss. Maybe not a success, but some player or some players have entered a boss room just under 6 billion times, 5.9 to be exact. Now the top 5 here, I think are pretty predictable. Number 1 being Malenia is just obvious. She's the hardest boss in the game by most people's opinion, and one of the funnest experiences in all of the Souls series that I've played. But number 2 and number 3 are quite interesting. Firstly, we have Margit, the Fell Omen. It's the first sort of main boss on the wall, the gatekeeper, literally, as it were. So I expected to see him. At number 2, it makes sense. But what makes me laugh is Limgrave, the Tree Sentinel. Him, the one that you step out the first step from and immediately fight. He is number 3, just after Margit, like 277 million attempts, just under the 281 of Margit. That's surprisingly close. I don't know about you, but in the network test, I wasted a good, I'd say 45 minutes of my initial playtime just fighting him, just because I wanted to beat him with whatever gear I had in that session. And it certainly seems a lot of people play the same. They're gonna bash their head against a really hard challenge. Now, number 4, that also makes sense to me. Radagon of the Golden Order, 148 million. Would you say that he's harder than the Elden Beast? I guess I would, yeah. It's just kind of the onslaught of going into the Elden Beast after you've used a bunch of heals, having fought Radagon. At number 5 though, 139 million, almost 10 million less than Radagon. Star Scourge Radahn, I think he's a fantastic boss and was really hard for a lot of people, so I can completely understand that one too. Next, we have Causes of Death, which is over at 9 billion. This is really funny. So 69%, nice. Enemies and NPCs are the cause of most deaths. Your AI that you encounter in the open world and bosses, of course. At 14%, we have people just falling to death. And to be fair, in this game, there's so much of that because it's an open world for the first time. There's a lot of places you can just leap to your death. Only 2% die to another player though, so the grand majority is entirely PvE. 98% of the deaths, that's crazy. Next, summons, we can see online play in action. 88% of the people that do online summoning is co-op. It's co-op play. Only 12% do invasions. I wonder how that stat relates to the arena and how that's changed things. But I can imagine it's normal invasions and summon PvP like duels before the arenas were actually added. 12% though. The number feels about right, but it still makes me sad to see, you know, that's the percent of the community that's actually doing PvP, it would appear. Next, we have the top 5 spells cast, which is quite interesting. Number 1 being Rocksling is a reasonable one. I spoke about this recently in my Sorcery tier list. I think it's a top tier pick. It's a physical magical spell and it can stagger enemies. It is fantastic and a lot of people really like it, so it's not a shock to me. What is a shock is that Crystal Torrent is number 2. Josh was explaining this one to me. Apparently it's basically the baby version of Comet Azure, doing much the same thing, just like 5 or 10% weaker. Maybe it's quite a meta build, and especially because you can get it quite early in a playthrough, maybe that's why it's cast so much. But yeah, one that I never really see myself. Stone Pebble makes sense because it was literally broken and overpowered for a very long period of Elden Ring. Great Blade Phalanx, that's an interesting one to me. You do see a lot of those in PvP, but I was thinking maybe the Ash of War or the like 8-sword sorcery one. This one being the most popular one is probably because it's maybe easier to get. And then Rotten Breath, which was the top tier breath attack for all content, generally PvE or PvP. So that being in the top 5 makes sense. I just thought it would be higher. Lastly, they gave us this. Top 5 most acquired incantations. What it should be is top 5 cast incantations. Instead, it's what people have just picked up. So Blessing of Erdtree, you just get it as you progress the game. It's like one of the main paths. As you leave the Sanctuary of the Erdtree, you just pick it up. Yeah, I don't know. This has no relevance. It's not really that interesting at all. It's just where people go and what they're most often picking up in a playthrough. A strange one to be sure, but yeah, cool infographic overall. I enjoyed looking at it. Next, we have one to do with the Erdtrees and the branches around the world. Of course, they're very useful things because you pick up the seeds at them to increase our flash charges, but there's an interesting comparison to real world and probable inspiration to these things. And it's actually not to do with the trees itself directly, it's to do with the runes and this strange circular shape and what it might actually represent. It was posted here on Reddit by FreeTrolley42, talking about the runes are kind of just slices of Erdtree branches. Compared to a real world little branch or sapling and that being cut and you looking into sort of the core, it's quite a similar circular design. And you could imagine the smaller saplings being the smaller runes or like less clear, and the bigger branches being the more clear, bigger, thicker, defined ones. The top comment on the post though came from Thunder Cuddles, who talked about how traditional Norse casting runes did exactly this. They would take the tree branches and take these cuts, making coins and dice out of them, and then engrave onto them. Could it be then that these runes are essentially just cuts of Erdtree branches that have been engraved with the soul of a character, and that's how we take their runes and use them for ourselves? After all, there's that whole concept of the souls returning to the Erdtree with the remembrances. That is kind of the main thing that happens. That's the soul being returned. We've got that power. Maybe these runes are that kind of concept, just harnessed into a coin shape to create a rune. It's a really cool theory, and one that I wanted to talk about. Moving on to a topic we talked about last time, which was to do with Godwyn and primordial forces that are twisting that body into that chimeric design. What if perhaps this is similar to the Misbegotten in the way that they are kind of these strange animalistic creatures? How were they turned into that? And does it have something to do with the Crucible? And the thing is, I want to add on to this from a comment from Max44321 in the comments regarding the Crucible incantations. So that's the aspect of the Crucible: horns, breath, and tail. If we read these incantations, we can see that it says it's a manifestation of the Erdtree's primal vital energies, an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together. Each of these incantations allow you to pull out like an extra limb, and it's not until you really stop and look at it that maybe this is like the limbs of those misbegotten. Maybe this is what's growing out of them, and what is considered previously in that, crucible period to be blessings, to be something worthy and good. But now in the current faction, the way that times changed, they're suddenly shunned and treated so poorly. Max was the one that said perhaps these aspects of the crucible, like this tail whip, is more of a ancient version of what the demi-humans we see today actually have. And so with Godwyn here in the background being kind of fused with that old energy, its, quote, primal vital energies could be what's turning him into that strange chimeric form. Next up, we have an interesting detail revealed on Twitter recently to do with the Banished Knight helm. This is the same helm right here. It's just sort of covered by the scarf. It was SekiroDoobie that took a look at this to reveal what was actually on the scarf, the full texture of it. It's hard to take a look at it when you're just looking at it in game, but when it's flattened down like this by SekiroDoobie, it's a bit easier to see. Quite a unique emblem and symbol, and it's funny because we've been looking at these recently on the channel. What faction and what origin of that symbol are we looking at? Well, it did remind me of someone actually, so I put on the veteran armor set, and as you can see, it has the cape and a similar sort of red and symbol to it. Further, if we look at Commander O'Neill's weapon, the Commander's Standard, it has that same kind of scarf wrapping around it. I think that might be the exact same symbol that's on the scarf of the Banished Knight. It was my understanding that the Banished Knights are basically the Storm Knights, the former defenders of Stormvale Keep, defeated by, the Golden Order, Godfrey leading that charge up. So why would it be that the Banished Knights would ally themselves with Commander O'Neill, who serves Miquella and his faction? What's their connection? What's the origin? Why are they working together? The reason I say they're working together is because it's Commander O'Neill that actually buffs up his allies and summons, Banished Knights in his boss fight. Let me know your thoughts on that connection. What's the reasoning behind that? But there you have it, another episode of Things You Didn't Know down. A main look at some outside sources today that I found really interesting over the last week. Though, of course, we have some interesting questions and theories there, so I'd love to hear your input on that. Also, by the way, sorry about my voice cracking like crazy today. I'm getting a little sick, so I hope it wasn't too invasive on the video. For now, though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.